This is Brian with Sawati for the Setonian.com. We're sitting down with Melissa Boege, who just finished up her time as the president of the Student Government Association here at Seton Hall. So Melissa, thanks for coming to join us here in our office, our newsroom, if you will.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
So we're going to talk a bit about your time as SGA president, kind of a year in review, so to speak, considering that you are the face, essentially, of a government organization for the student body here at Seton Hall. Holding the job for a year, I guess people ask us as editors of a newspaper how we manage that with classes and other obligations, but I'd imagine being SGA president's got to take a significant part of your time.
It definitely did, but I felt that I was prepared for it. I know personally I had kind of arranged my class schedule, taking into account that I would have a lot to do with SGA, so it worked out very well. It definitely is a big time commitment, but it's something that I felt very passionate about, so it fit its way into my schedule fairly well.
Great. So let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts of what you did over the last year. Talk to us and our viewers about the highlights of your time as SGA president and what your administration essentially was able to accomplish.
Sure. I think what was most important to us going into this year was developing a good relationship with the administrators and with key leadership on campus. And that was something that we continued to work on throughout the entire year. We had a number of smaller projects that we were able to accomplish, different things with gourmet dining services, working on the library hours, and smaller things that we were able to do fairly quickly or easily. But what really meant the most to us was developing these kinds of positive relationships with the administrators, and that was something that we really did have to work on.
I'm going to jump ahead of my questions here because you mentioned Dr. Esteban, and obviously at the Setonian we're very much aware of what a wild year it's been, really I'd say even a year and a half with all kinds of news around the campus. We've had everything from the highlights and lowlights of this year, tragedy, to finally having a settled administrator at the top in Dr. Esteban. Talk to us, if you can, about how what's gone on at Seton Hall kind of shaped your time as SGA president.
Well, it definitely was a rough first semester for obviously the entire campus as well as for SGA. Working in the face of the tragedy and then with the sexual assault incident that happened in November, it definitely was a learning experience for SGA as far as how we respond to different situations, who we look to in leadership to give us information, and how we respond to it as a body with what kind of action that we take. We found that the administration was very supportive of us and very helpful. They were willing to meet with us. We had a lot of meetings with Dr. Winkle around the time of both incidents, and she was very forthcoming with information. She was always willing to talk with us about ideas or feedback that we may have from the students, and she also was willing to share what her division was working on, which we could bring back to the students as well. And President Esteban, though we didn't see him as frequently through those incidents as we did with other administrators, he always was very supportive. He always gave a positive impression and worked very well with us. So we really appreciated what he did especially through our more difficult times this semester.
And you mentioned the term rough, which I think is very fair, having been students, we both as seniors lived through the fall semester. Looking back subjectively, I suppose, do you think it hindered what you were able to accomplish in the fall?
Yes and no, I would say. I think that we were able to accomplish a lot of the things that we set out at the beginning of the year, sort of regardless of what happened in the fall, but yet definitely the issues with public safety really became more of a focus in SGA than I think it would have been otherwise. But I mean, we are really here to represent the students, and if public safety became a concern among the students, it wouldn't be right for us to not focus on that. So it definitely was not something we planned to focus on going into the year, but it certainly wasn't something we could move away from once it became an issue. And that was something that we definitely worked on and addressed with the administrators throughout the rest of the year. And I assume will continue even more so in the year to come.
Great. So speaking of continuing, what's left right now that our incoming SGA President Darrell Stroud is, I guess, working on? Anything that's kind of continued over? You mentioned earlier that he was sworn in just a couple of days ago. So what's on the top of his agenda coming from the time that you were SGA President?
Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure what Darrell is continuing that's directly from my e-board's goals and initiatives. A lot of things, like I said, that we were working on were more or less accomplished, and he has plenty of his own ideas that he would like to see for next year. I know he wants to revisit the issue on the library hours and would like to see perhaps a change in the hours that are offered now or an increase for next year. And he's also looking to promote a smoking initiative, which would, I believe, change up where smokers are allowed to smoke on campus.
I remember too, as well, Melissa, about a year ago, you came and your opponent as well, who I honestly don't remember, but I guess you're here, and that's the reason why. Talked about some of the ideas, and one idea that I know that you hope to bring to the campus was the Red Box, the DVD rental system. Can you talk to us about that? If there were, what were the hindrances in getting to that program, or maybe it's actually underway and we're not aware?
Well, we did look into that a great deal, but the issue with Red Box is that they're very specific as to what colleges they want to come to. They're actually very slow to come on college and university campuses in general, and they have a minimum requirement for the number of students that we didn't meet. So despite going back and forth with them in the fall, it wasn't something that they were able to offer us at the time. And we looked into other services that weren't quite as known as Redbox, but there were different catches to that. Like, for example, we had to have someone that was trained to refill the machine. We had to have someone in the university center who was willing to oversee it or put down a deposit for it. And we asked around a little bit. It wasn't something at the time that we felt that we could move forward on.
Now, not specific to the idea of Redbox, but the student activities fee in general that has been discussed. I know this is much more of an SAB topic, I'm sure, but now that I guess that you're no longer the SGA president, and it's not like you're speaking for the group specifically, the organization. What are your thoughts? I'm kind of curious. More so as a student, and again, one as a senior who won't be affected by it. The possibility of a fee being implemented to help out some of the events that go on around campus, because as SGA president, I'm sure you're well aware of the struggles of the university financially.
Certainly. I was one of the first students that became aware of the possibility of a student activity fee, and I worked closely with Dean Van Norman when they had the original committee to discuss it. And my original thought, and my thought to this day, is that I feel very positively about it. I know that the students are very hesitant to have another fee added on top of the tuition that we pay, and I certainly understand that as a student myself. But I also feel that for the money that we would be putting in, we would be getting a great deal out of it. And I really understand, especially like seeing SGA clubs trying to put on different events and hearing from SAB and the funding that they have now, that some events simply aren't possible with the money that we are given now from the university. And I think the one phrase that was constantly tossed around when we were doing this was that this would be culture changing.
So after a year at the top of the SGA, after 4 years of being here at Seton Hall, and I know you've been very active with the SGA throughout your time here, just kind of put it all in review and perspective, and I suppose your train of thought, your mentality after now being able to look back at what you've done in the past year with the position you held.
Well, I've really enjoyed working with SGA, both last year working as a senator and this year working as the president. I feel that SGA really has the power to do a lot of good on this campus, and when given the right tools and the right motivation, I think that it can do really great things. And this year I was really proud of what both the Senate and the Executive Board accomplished. I think that seeing individual senators so passionate about their work and seeing that in meetings and the things that they said and communicated to one another just really spoke to me about how much they care about the school and how much they're willing to work for it. And I've had a really positive experience at this school and in SGA.